So I'm going to show you what the difference in roof heights look like just on a very simple plan, and so that you can kind of have a feel for, now that you have learned about roof pitches, what that actually looks like and how to change that in GeoArchitect. So I am going to just start with a blank plan here, and we're just going to do a really simple plan, just for example. So I have auto roofs turned on, and so we're going to see what the whole outside looks like. There's obviously no doors or windows. I'm just gonna throw some random ones in here. Okay, reminds me of like playing The Sims or something. So I have this hipped roof specifically. I'm going to change this front to a gable to better illustrate what the different roof pitches look like. So to do that, you just select the roof, and I have changed my handle to be a bright yellow so that you can see what is selected. The default is kind of a gray that you don't really notice, so I would suggest you switch it to like a bright pink or an orange or yellow, like whatever color works for you, so that you can see what do you have selected. Because when you're going through trying to look at different details and the walls are close together and you think that you clicked this wall here, but this is what highlights as yellow, you're like, oh, clicked the wrong one. So I highly recommend you do that. But you select the wall that you want to change, and I'm gonna pull this toolbar here. Your toolbar may be somewhere else. Mine was over on the far right. But you're going to select this tool that just looks like a little house, and it says change to gable wall. And it's just the red portion, not up here in the roof sections. It's not in here specifically. So you select, oops, that's my bad. So you select the wall that you want to change, and I'm going to make it a gable wall. Like I said, I have auto roof turned on, so you can see that it just automatically did it for me, which is nice. Now, if you come in here and you go to build roof, under the roof bar, I have auto rebuild roofs is currently checked on here, and it's doing a rafter. I almost always swap it to trusses, and I like a heel height of 15 just as I'm working. And that is so that if an energy heel is necessary, it's already being accounted for in there. It's a lot easier for me to like pull everything back down if they don't need the heel height, than if, like, let's say there's a second story and a wall's kind of running into it up there. If you don't need the heel in that one portion, then it just creates more space. Whereas let's say you had egress in those windows in the bedroom, and now you have to accommodate a heel. So it's just, I like to do it like that way. So I'm going to pull it all the way down to a 2 so you can see how much dramatically that changes how it looks. It looks almost flat. And so if I were using a 2, I likely would open this wall instead, and I'd go to roof and click high shed gable wall, because when you have that shallow of a pitch, it's going to be more on the modern side. So I'm going to want a shed roof of some sort, and then I probably would swap this one out as well and make it more modern like that. And then, so now if we go back into build roof, and I'm going to jump up to a 4, you can see that that's starting to get a little ridiculous looking. So we'll want to pop this one back down to a gable. It still can work at a 4. In my climate, if you go 4 or less, you tend to want a metal roof, just because the snow can slough off. But if you're in a area that's not a consideration, then you have to worry about it as much. So I'm going to pull this one back down just so we're looking at a regular gable, because if I don't, as I swap out the roof here, like I go to a 6, it looks really silly. So now we're just, instead of a high shed, We're just showing that the roof pitch is sitting here. So most of the main bodies of roofs, I tend to do a 6 to 8, just so that when you have really large spans, it's the main body of the roof is not getting just absurdly tall. I know this is a tiny little cottage of sorts, so you don't notice it here, but if this wall were, like, let's just swap it out really quick. If I went, this one particular wall is 40 feet long at a 6 and 12, this is the width, so it's not as bad, but it did get taller in order to accommodate that roof plane. So you can see how much, it's pretty much double from what it was. And so this is just much smaller. So I like to keep it around 6 to 8. 6 is really my go-to. And especially because some roofers will also charge you more when you get to 8 and higher. It depends on the roofer. And so you don't want to have to spend extra on that portion. And then I would just make just the little bump outs be taller in order to have that vibe. So let's continue up and show what does an 8 and 12 look like. So I opened up again the build roof and I swapped it to 8. It doesn't look dramatically different, but that's just the mid-range there. And then now let's pull it up to a 10 and 12. This is where it starts to get really steep. Now I'm going to show this one as an example for if we had that other roof that would be so dramatically taller. So if I pull this back to 40 feet again, you're about to see why I do the main body is so much smaller. It's like, doop, it's getting to this really sharp little peak. And if I also make this a lot wider, you can see, I mean, this is an 1,800 square foot house just as it sits here. And look how large that roof line is. It's just a little silly. So I would do the 10 and 12 here on the little bump out, and then the main body of the roof I would only do like a 6 and 12 so that its roof line could be closer down in this area, almost half. Not quite, but almost. So I'm gonna undo those changes really quick. And then we're gonna bump up to now a 12 and 12, which is a pure 90-degree angle. So right here, this is a right triangle. So one side of the triangle, and doesn't really matter where you cut it, it's a right triangle. And it's getting to be pretty steep. This is a tiny little 500 square foot cottage, so it would be like an ADU, or some people call them mother-in-law's quarters, or guest houses, pool houses, depends on what you would call it. But there's a 12 and 12. You can get, you probably are noticing I'm going in increments of 2. I personally just don't really like odd numbers. It's a weird quirk. Sometimes I need to use an odd number. It is what it is. But when I'm designing, I generally do even numbers, especially when roofs are included. Not necessarily for the shape, but like I would go 30 feet here as I'm cleaning it up versus 29. And then here I'm gonna go 26 feet. And this is actually because in my area, normally a roof is going to be done in 24 on center. So you'll have a truss, the next 24 inches, another truss, and so on and so forth. If you have an odd number on the wall, you still had to buy that end truss, and then somewhere in there's going to be like 12 inches and then another truss, and then 24 and 24, 24, 24. So if you already had to buy that truss, I would, as long as it fits within setbacks, I would rather just have that extra 12 inches. That's just kind of my opinion. So like I said, I'm just going to clean these numbers up because it's making me itch just a little bit. And as we're looking at it from the outside, I was a little hasty, so it's not symmetrical. Okay, so that is a 12 and 12, and you can have above a 12 and 12. So I normally don't see higher than like a 14 and 12, but it's getting into the really steep, like chalets, like Swiss chalet, or like a mansard roof, sort of, would be more on the steep side. But I mean, there's only so far that you can go before it's like straight up and down. So like if I bumped it to a 16, like it's starting to get a bit intense. You can do it. And sometimes like an A-frame may have the steeper pitch just for that look, but I wouldn't want to be the person who has to go up there and sheet and put the truss, or sheet it and then put on the shingles. So that looks expensive to me. It's almost straight up. You probably would have to have specialized machinery and equipment in order to achieve it. But the beauty of it is, like, look, it entirely provided space for a room up there. So there's pluses and minuses, but generally I don't see roofs this steep. Even just on the little details is probably at most going to be a 12 and 12. But if you need just the sharper in that area in order for it to look a little bit more like a particular style, then you can do so. So like if I were looking at a European look, I would maybe want to, I'm just gonna change the whole plan here. So the whole thing's stucco. Turn on some shadows. I mean, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I just want to show how the roof is one of the main drivers of the style of a house and how it looks from the outside. So we're just gonna go pick a random one. I'm just gonna go object. So this looks like a cottage of sorts. Keep hitting the wrong button. I gotta do that one. So this is starting to approach and look a little bit more French country. So you have all these materials on the outside, and the only thing we're gonna change in this whole roof structure, I'm gonna pull it down to a 5 and 12. Suddenly it does not have the same effect that we were going for. It just, now it looks like a ranch that was trying to mimic a French country. So roof lines are, I would say, the biggest driving factor of the style and how something looks. See, now this looks like a little French cottage, or if I painted it a dark color, it could easily be, I don't know, I'm just gonna pick this random one. It's a French chalet. So just keep that in mind when you're doing roofs, that if you're going one style over the other, if you want it more modern, much more shallow roofs, and if you want it to be sort of country or farmhouse, you're going to go a little bit steeper. And the cottage style is going to be even steeper thus. So, but sometimes it's necessary in order to achieve the look you're going for. So that's kind of an example of what different roof pitches look like. And if you want degrees, or for whatever reason, there is a little toggle switch on here. I've never used a degree as far as my scale. It's just odd. But like if you do a 12 and 12, it should be 45. It is. So to recap, the more shallow the roof, the more modern the look. And for the body, you're probably going to want to go like a 6 to 8. So for most properties. Even if you're going for a modern, but you only want to pay for just a shed roof in one spot, the wall's too long for the whole thing, then you could do just the shed portion is a shallower pitch, and then the main body of the house is just like a 6 or a 7, because maybe you want the modern look but you're in a high snow load area. Well, that's a workaround, is the majority of the roof is going to be sloughing off all the snow, and then you just strategically have a shallower spot just to accent. So, catch you next time.